So here's what I would say. Rapamycin for a small molecule is probably the only pharmacological intervention that has been reproducibly shown to robustly increase lifespan and health span across that broad evolutionary spectrum. There are other things out there like alpha-ketoglutarate, where there are reports in yeast and worms and flies and mice of lifespan extension. It just hasn't been tested or reproduced as much. But on the genetic side, and this is where I wanted to just add a little bit of additional context to what David was saying, which is that with rapamycin, it's not only the drug, but we also have genetic inhibition of mTOR in each of those model systems that recapitulates the longevity and health span benefits. So it's a rock solid, airtight case for mTOR and longevity. But also on the genetic side, this is a study that we did with Brian Kennedy and Daniel Promislo, this was probably 2007, where we asked the question, if we looked at all of the genes at that time that were known to affect lifespan in yeast, and all of the genes that were known to affect lifespan in worms, and we simply looked at orthologs, meaning the same gene in each organism, how often is genetic control of longevity shared? And it turns out it's pretty often. So there is a relatively high degree of evolutionary conservation at the level of genetic control of longevity across a broad evolutionary distance. And that's really been the whole thesis of my career, right, is trying to understand those evolutionarily shared mechanisms of longevity. So I just think it's important for me, I guess, to say that, because there's a lot of confusion now in the field. There have been a lot of new people come into the longevity field who, for whatever reason, aren't familiar with a lot of this history. And so they ask questions like, well, how do we know that you can use worms to understand anything about aging in a mammal? And I'm like, because we already know that the genetics of longevity are conserved. Not everything's going to be conserved, but it has been statistically shown that there is a conservation of the biology of aging. And that's kind of fundamentally important to how we think about studying the biology of aging in the laboratory and then potentially translating those discoveries into the real world.